Hi, my name's Seth Hummel. Um, I just want to say thank you for coming to Securing AI with ISO 42001 and ISO 27001, and I'll get into what those are here in a few slides. I did my postgrad work at MIT in business systems design, structural problem solving, and innovation. I'm a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt and I'm an ISO lead auditor. Just a little on the agenda. Um, why AI needs better security, an overview of each standard, how they work together, a startup action plan with a checklist with instructions, and then we can have some question and answers. As we all know, AI introduces dynamic and evolving risks within our businesses. Traditional IT frameworks definitely don't account for opaque decision making, probabilistic behavior, and the rapid pace of AI changing. So I did some research on a few different things for AI, and one of the things that was the most surprising to me was that most of the companies I spoke with didn't even have traditional information security management systems. And that it's just traditional security isn't enough. We've got to beef it up. But the ones that didn't have it, admittedly, they said that they had some things in place, but not a system itself. The Department of Justice actually published something, and Forbes picked it up. And in an article I was reading on from Forbes, they said the Department of Justice, when they investigate leaks from AI companies or adversarial inputs from AI companies, when they're investigating things that are criminal based, what they look for at the company level is the company's AI driven compliance program well designed? Um, is it earnestly implemented and does it work in practice? That's the Department of Justice and what they're looking for. There is something that could be bad here from a leak standpoint, and it could be negligence. The lack of duty of care for customers or their data or what customers upload into the system and that data. Um, uh, Depending on who it affects, there could be negligence involved. And that's something that you don't want to deal with as an organization. You don't want to have to face a lawsuit with regard to an AI system that you've created for somebody else to use, because that's probably not why you're in business. It's the opposite of what you want to have happen. As we presentation, I'm going to go through ISO 27001. It's an information security management system standard. But first, let me tell you a little bit about ISO standards if you don't know what they are. ISO, which literally means equal, it's the Greek root for equal. Um, ISO standards are developed out of Geneva, Switzerland, with the International Organization for Standardization. There are thousands of ISO standards. The ISO standards that I'm talking about today are management system standards. So they were put in place to level the playing field for all companies that are using them. And they have best practices in them for companies to follow and to use. Um, AI is, or I'm sorry, ISO 27001 is your organization's blueprint for protecting all forms of information. It ensures, when you follow it, it ensures that you have policies, controls, and continuous risk management in place. If you have those things right off the bat, if that's something that you do innately, it still would be good to take a look at this standard to see if you have everything that it recommends. All of the standards are put together with experts, representatives from over 50 countries, and they take years to design and implement um, the development of the standard itself before it's published and ready for the public to use it. The most widely used standard from a management system standpoint is ISO 9001. And there are literally over 5 million companies in the world using that standard to run their quality and customer satisfaction systems within their organization. So I'll go through the slide. It covers confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information. It applies to the entire organization, so it's not just a person or a department. And when I say prevention first and correction post, the aim of the standard is to prevent things from bad things from actually happening rather than teaching you how to correct something after it's happened. Um, I noticed a story today on the news in Ohio. I'm sitting in Columbus, Ohio. I'm from the great city of Dayton, Ohio. I'm on my way out to California, so I'm over in Columbus to take a flight. And a major hospital system in Dayton called Kettering Health Network had a breach, and all of their data is being held until they either pay or correct the breach. So systems like this prevent people from actually uh, prevent issues from actually happening, even in emergency rooms. These hospitals weren't able to take emergency room patients because they had no systems available for them to check people in, for them to do data, for them to look up records, pretty much anything. So it's a pretty serious system when you start to implement it. There are most likely about 1 million companies in the world that use ISO 27001 for information security management. The standard is made up of 6 clauses, well, 7 clauses, counting clause 4 through 10. Um, Clause 4, the context of the organization. You understand what affects your organization's information security, both internal and external. You identify when you're doing context of the organization, you identify who is interested in your security. So if it's clients, regulators, employees, owners, shareholders, board members, and what they expect out of security. And then you start to define the scope of your information security management system. So, what part of your organization does it need to cover? Talk about leadership. Leadership is always key when implementing an ISO system. Top management must take responsibility for making information security a priority, and they have to prove that they've taken responsibility. This isn't just them talking, they have to show records that they've taken responsibility for this. They'd have to define and communicate an information security policy that aligns with the company's goals, and they assign roles and responsibilities so everyone knows their part in protecting information. Um, the leadership is definitely looked at as one of the key clauses in the standard because, as we all know, when we're putting a system in place, leadership has to be involved or it's not going to go anywhere, especially with an ISO system. Clause 6 is planning. This is where you start to get into identifying the risks and opportunities that could affect your information security. So, where are there risks related to the company? You set objectives for improving security and you decide how to achieve those objectives. And you plan how to handle identified risks using appropriate actions and controls. So, you're identifying the risks and you're using things like SWATs or other risk analysis tools. And then you're planning on how to handle those identified risks with planning. Support. You're ensuring that people have the knowledge, training, and resources needed for information security. You communicate clearly about security policies and expectations inside and outside of the organization, and you maintain documented information, policies and procedures, records to support the information security management system. Clause 8 is operation. This is where the rubber starts to meet the road. You implement plans and controls to manage information security risks. You carry out activities in line with documented procedures and security controls, and you prepare for and respond to information security incidents when they happen. Um, Clause 9, you monitor and measure how well your information security system is working. You audit the system by conducting internal audits of the processes that you have in place. And you review those results with management, or even if you're part of management, with your colleagues for how the system is doing and how you can improve that system. Clause 10 is improvement. Take action when things go wrong. You correct the problems and learn from them. You continuously look for ways to make your system better, and you ensure that any nonconformances that are found are addressed so they don't happen again. ISO 27001 goes even further. They published an annex with it. It gives you 93 controls that you should put in place within your organization. So, small, medium, large businesses, ISO 27001 gives you a blueprint for the 93 things that you should control. An example for AI specific applications. With ISO 27001, you're securing your model access with role-based access control. You're encrypting training data. You're creating agreements with your vendors for cloud-based controls. By the way, Amazon, AWS, they have ISO 27001. Microsoft has ISO 27001. A lot of the companies that you look to and work with on a daily basis have this system in place because they understand and know how crucial information security is. Another, or actually a company example, a predictive AI SaaS, what they would use ISO 27001 to direct them to do would be to encrypt client data at rest and in transit. They log model versions and inferences. They give periodic access reviews for developers. And they have service level agreements with AWS and Vertex, which is aligned to ISO 27001 standard. ISO 42001, it's a relatively new standard. It's 2 years old. It was written because of the onset of AI and the use of AI within businesses and from a personal standpoint. Um, ISO 42001 is the first ISO standard focused exclusively on AI, and it ensures that your systems are ethical, explainable, and aligned with the intended purpose. Its focus is AI specific risk, ethics, transparency, and life cycle control. I'm going to go through this standard pretty quickly as well. Um, For context of the organization, it's the same exact structure as ISO 27001. So when you're doing context for the organization for 27001 or vice versa for 42001, you're essentially doing it from the perspective of how does the AI system that we're creating create internal or external issues that affect your company and your AI management system. You determine and document the relative interested parties and their needs. So again, that's the same thing with ISO 27001. This could be your stakeholders, owners, a board, employees, and more importantly, your customers. Leadership, it's the same exact, almost the same exact leadership clause as well. So doing these two standards together, you eliminate some work that has to be done because the context, leadership, planning, support, operation is the same structure. You're just looking for different things. Planning, identify AI specific risks and opportunities, and develop mitigation or enhancement plans. Set measurable objectives related to AI performance, risk management, and continual improvement. So you have to set objectives for each of these standards that you're going to be measuring to. So zero incidents with regard to role-based access control or zero incidents with regard to detecting bias within your AI product. Uh, I'm sorry, to get back to where I was on six, integrated AI risk-based thinking into change management and your strategic planning process. So risk-based thinking is key for both of these standards. You're looking for the risks, you're trying to mitigate them, and then you're trying to learn from them. It's basically plan, do, check, act. If you know the Shewart or Deming cycle, plan, do, study, act, or plan, do, check, act. That's what both of these standards are built on. Support, you're ensuring competent personnel are assigned to manage and govern AI systems through training or hiring. You're maintaining documented information. So those policies, procedures, records that I talked about with ISO 27001, it's the same thing for AI, for your AI management system. And you're establishing effective communication processes regarding the risks, the performance, and the controls across the organization. People should know what they have access to and what they don't have access to and why. Operation, you implement controls to ensure AI system integrity, reliability, fairness, and transparency. You maintain the procedures for managing AI lifecycle activities, including design, training, validation, and deployment. If this is something you have without a standard, it's great, but the standard is a guideline to show you what you should put in place. Uh, and you prepare contingency plans for unintended AI behavior, including a rollback or shutdown procedures. How many of you have a shutdown procedure for your AI system? And this is from the standpoint of a company that is creating a tool or a service that can be used by customers, by the general public, or by businesses. So I'm talking about this from a perspective of a company that wants to create AI or that is creating AI that can be used for their customers. The same standard, though, applies to a company that uses AI only. It's just a little less robust. You go into nine, that's where you're doing internal audits on those processes and procedures, looking for records that the processes have been followed. You're conducting those regular internal audits at a planned interval, and you're holding management reviews to review the data that those audits produce. And then 10 is continuous improvement. You are constantly improving your system. So the concept of an MVP, every ISO system when it is built is an MVP. It's your minimum viable product. It's where you start. You don't write a system that is for a company or a product that is different than what you have. Write it specifically for the company that you're in and the product that you have. That way it can grow with that company and with that product. Real world use cases for ISO 42001. Um, generative AI compliance reviews for bias and hallucination, creating an AI ethics board for your organization, and having AI lifecycle documentation and accountability. I'm curious as to how many of you have that AI lifecycle documentation and accountability. These are the types of questions I ask businesses, and some of them look at me like a puppy looks at somebody and turns its head. And these are big businesses creating AI systems to run their business. A company example, generative AI legal assistant. So the risk is that it gives inaccurate legal suggestions. The mitigation is model fine tuning and periodic human review. Using clause 6 and clause 8, you're defining, testing, documenting, and auditing the model purpose, how the model works, what the outcome of the model is, and you're logging your decision support sessions. So whenever you're making a decision to move something from one place to another, you're logging that, especially if it's an important decision that affects the system at hand. The two together are stellar. If your AI product is valuable, it's a target. If it's helpful, it must be responsible. ISO 27001 and ISO 42001 are your strategic weapons. And I don't know if you knew about those standards before today, but they're out there. They're able to be purchased, interpreted, and you can always come back to me if you need help or have questions on them. They're your strategic weapons, not just to protect your systems, but to grow your business. Think about putting these systems in place. And one thing about putting them in place is that it creates trust with your customer base. I know before we started hosting on AWS, I looked to see if there were ISO systems that they were certified to. And they're certified to 5 different standards, including ISO 9001, which is a general quality management system. But both ISO 27001 and ISO 42001 are among the standards that they're certified to. Here are your 5 actions for startups. You create an AI asset register, define AI risk appetite, enforced role-based access control for model access, enable logging and alerts, and write an AI ethics code. I don't care how small you are, write an AI ethics code. Here are some instructions for those things. So, one second here. For number one, inventory all models, data sets, and APIs. Just have those documented. Perform a stride or octave risk analysis when you're doing your risk. When you're looking for number two, define your risk appetite. You're going to perform a stride or octave risk analysis. You can use identity and access management tools for access policies. Integrate with central logging, so a security information and event management system that you could use for that, showing your IT department or your IT individual who logs into what, when, and why. And you're gonna when you're making your ethics code, you're gonna define your bias mitigation and your transparency goals for the system. Those are 5 things. These 5 things are something a company can do that you don't have to buy a standard. You don't need a consultant. These are 5 things you can do to make your company more secure, to make your system more secure. And with that, We're open for questions.